Hi there, thanks for joining us. I'm Michelle Toy with SmithGeiger, joined by my colleague Chris Lang. Hey Chris.
Hey there, how you doing, Michelle?
Pretty good. I was just looking at this new wave of research we have, wave four.
Yeah, it's been good. We've done, as you said, wave four, three prior waves, and this is pretty fresh data we've got here with over 1,200 respondents. So, good size study.
I wanted to dive in first on the COVID response. We are showing on this wave that 67% of local TV viewers say that local news is doing a good or exceptional job at covering the coronavirus, which, as we know, we're several months into this pandemic. What do you think about, the changing numbers and the fact that people are still super interested in this topic?
I think it's been, impressive the scores that local news has gotten. Those are pretty good scores, and the fact that that story continues to change every day, and that local news has been a real primary source for people throughout the pandemic, I think is really striking. That's a source that they're looking to with that kind of confidence, and continuing to turn to local news to keep up with things as those numbers change every day.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing where you have to watch daily just because the numbers are changing every day.
Definitely. And I think it's been one of those things where it's difficult for people to know exactly what to pay attention to. And there have been so many different angles and different ways to look at that story. So that's another thing that I think local news stations can help with.
Yeah, and I noticed that another one that we get good, local news is getting good scores for is just how they're reporting on the economic impact, which we know is the longer the shutdowns continue, the more that people are being affected. And there's just so many rules for different states on the businesses being reopened and then closed.
Yeah, completely. And obviously, schools have been a hot topic the past couple of days, and we've been hearing in our qualitative research that that's a big worry for parents as we get closer to the fall, exactly what's going to happen there. And that has an economic impact as well that I think stations can focus on.
Right, because if the kids aren't going back to school, parents can't go back to work.
That's exactly right.
How can you homeschool them if you're trying to get back to your job? So
yeah, right.
Definitely a huge concern. And then on the protests, moving on, we see that 63% of local news viewers say, hey, we're doing a good or acceptable job covering the protests.
Yeah, I think it's another pretty good score for the local news stations. And it's one of those things where the local impact really varies from market to market and exactly what's happened. And those are the sorts of details that those local stations can provide. And I think they're the one place that viewers know they can turn to and trust. We see, bias is another thing that's come up in a lot of areas, and the local stations tend to get not painted with that brush nearly as broadly as some other sources do.
Sure. Like cable.
Right.
And I think that's why we get a lot of those trust scores too. People trust local news more. I thought it was interesting, how many people are looking for local news to share instances of racism in their communities. And that's why it's a local thing, right? Because we know each community has this problem, but in different ways. And so I think it's nice to see that our local stations are really sharing on a local level how racism is affecting members of their community and even members of their own news teams.
Definitely. There's a lot of history and a lot of markets that I think many viewers aren't aware of either that stations can talk about. And the other thing we've seen, and I know you've talked about this before too, is it's been such a visual story in a lot of cases that TV is really well suited, or those local stations are really well suited to bring that coverage to viewers on all their platforms.
Yeah, particularly on social, I think for sure with the social justice movement, social media is really playing a big role in that, just with starting the conversation.
Definitely. Yeah. So it's been nice to see, those scores that you mentioned in our study that show that people are still turning to those stations. We saw a big bump as soon as the pandemic started, but it's nice to see they're still trusting stations for that kind of information as those stories continue to develop.
So are we going to have another wave of research in the field, Are we going to see wave 5?
We are planning to launch another wave probably in the next week to 10 days. So look forward to bringing that new data to folks as well.
Absolutely. Can't wait to see that. Thanks so much, Chris.
Yeah.
And thanks everyone for joining us.